She stepped off that stagecoach in 1882 with nothing but a wooden crate of chickens and a marriage contract to a man she'd never met. The town thought she'd be gone in a week. Cole Mercer thought she'd cry herself back east within days. They were all wrong. This is the story of how a desperate arrangement on the Montana frontier became something neither of them expected, and how a woman everyone underestimated changed everything. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the general store, sending up a cloud of dust that hung in the thick August air like a curse. Evelyn Carter gripped the edge of the wooden crate on her lap, feeling the vibration of restless chickens beneath her fingers. Through the small window she could see them, men mostly, a few women, all staring with that particular blend of curiosity and judgment she'd grown familiar with over the past 3 weeks of travel. She didn't belong here. They knew it. She knew it. The driver climbed down and opened the door without ceremony. "Holleridge, miss, end of the line." Evelyn stepped carefully onto the running board. Her boots, too nice for this place, she realized immediately, touching Montana soil for the first time. The heat hit her like a wall. Back in Philadelphia, August meant garden parties and iced lemonade. Here, it meant something else entirely, something harder. "That all you got?" The driver nodded toward her crate. "Yes." He grunted, unimpressed, and hauled down her single trunk from the roof. It landed in the dirt with a thud that made her wince. Everything she owned in the world, treated like cargo. "Cole Mercer send word he'd be meeting you?" "He said he would." "Well," the driver glanced up the empty street. "Reckon he'll be along when he's ready. Ranchers keep their own time out here." He tipped his hat and climbed back up, and within minutes the stagecoach was gone, leaving Evelyn standing alone in the center of town with a trunk, a crate of chickens, and the weight of every eye in Holleridge on her back. She counted to 10, then turned to face them. The town wasn't much. A general store, a saloon, a livery, a handful of other buildings she couldn't identify. The street was wide and dusty, flanked by wooden sidewalks that looked like they'd collapse if you stepped wrong. Mountains rose in the distance, beautiful and indifferent. This was the kind of place people came to disappear, or to start over. "You the mail-order bride?" The voice came from a woman in a faded calico dress, standing in the doorway of the general store. She was maybe 40, with lines around her eyes that spoke of sun and squinting and not much laughter. "I'm Evelyn Carter," Evelyn said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm here to marry Cole Mercer." "That's what I said." The woman stepped out onto the sidewalk, arms crossed. "You got any idea what you're walking into, girl?" "I know enough." "Do you now?" It wasn't a question. The woman's gaze traveled over Evelyn, her clean traveling dress, her impractical boots, the crate of chickens she was holding like some kind of shield. "You ever worked a day in your life?" "Yes." "Scrubbing floors don't count out here." Evelyn felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. "I didn't come here to be judged, ma'am. I came here because Mr. Mercer and I made an arrangement." "An arrangement?" The woman snorted. "That what they're calling it back east?" Before Evelyn could respond, the sound of hoofbeats broke through the tension. A horse and rider appeared at the far end of the street, moving at an easy trot. The woman's expression shifted, not softening exactly, but pulling back. "That'll be him," she said. "Good luck, Miss Carter. You're going to need it." She disappeared back into the store. Evelyn turned toward the approaching rider, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. She'd seen a photograph, grainy, stiff, the kind people sent when they were trying to look respectable. It hadn't told her much. A man in his 30s, dark hair, serious expression. The letter that came with it had been even less revealing. "I need a wife. You need a home. We can make this work if you're willing," she'd written back the same day. Now, watching him ride closer, she realized the photograph had been a lie. Not in the details, the dark hair was accurate, the build was right, but in the feeling. The man in the picture had looked contained, manageable. The man climbing down from his horse looked like he'd been carved out of the same rock as the mountains behind him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his shirt dusty and sweat-stained. His face was weathered in a way that made it hard to pin down his age. Could have been 30, could have been 40. His eyes, dark and unreadable, swept over her once, taking in everything. "You're Evelyn Carter." I am. Cole Mercer. He didn't offer his hand. That your trunk? Yes. He bent and lifted it like it weighed nothing, securing it to the back of his horse with practiced efficiency. Then he looked at the crate she was holding. Chickens? 6 hens and a rooster, Evelyn said. Good layers. I thought they might be useful. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. You brought livestock. I brought assets, she corrected. I wasn't going to show up empty-handed. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he took the crate, handling it carefully, and secured it behind the saddle alongside her trunk. Ranch is 5 miles out, he said. You ever ridden? No. Then you're walking. I'll go slow. He swung back up into the saddle and started down the street without waiting to see if she'd follow. Evelyn stood there for 3 full seconds, fury and disbelief warring in her chest. Then she picked up her skirts and followed. The walk was brutal. Cole hadn't been lying when he said 5 miles, but he hadn't mentioned that those 5 miles were uphill, rocky, and exposed to the full force of the afternoon sun. Within 20 minutes, Evelyn's face was slick with sweat. Within 40, her feet were screaming inside her ridiculous boots. She refused to complain, refused to ask him to slow down, refused to give him the satisfaction. He rode ahead in silence, occasionally glancing back to make sure she hadn't collapsed. The landscape around them was nothing like Philadelphia. No trees to speak of, just scrub and rock and endless sky. It felt too big, too empty, like the world had been stripped down to its bones. How much farther? She finally asked, hating the rasp in her voice. 2 miles. She bit back a groan. You want to rest? Say so. I'm fine. Suit yourself. They kept going. By the time the ranch came into view, Evelyn's legs were shaking and her throat was dry as dust, but she was still on her feet. The ranch wasn't much to look at. A single-story house, weathered gray wood, a sagging porch, a barn that had seen better days, a few outbuildings scattered around like afterthoughts, fences that needed mending, dirt and rock and stubborn grass. In the distance, she could see cattle, not many, and a few horses in a corral. Cole dismounted and started unloading her things without a word. This is it? Evelyn asked. This is it. It's smaller than I expected. It's what I got. He set her trunk down on the porch. You changed your mind. Stagecoach comes back through in 3 days. I didn't say that. Didn't have to. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time she saw something other than blankness in his face. Exhaustion, maybe. Or resignation. You're here because you got no other choice. That about right? Evelyn met his gaze and didn't flinch. You're here because you need help you can't afford to hire. That about right? His jaw tightened. Yeah. Then we understand each other. Do we? We made an agreement, Mr. Mercer. I intend to keep it. Do you? For a moment she thought he might actually smile, but he just turned and carried the chicken crate toward the barn. Get yourself settled, he called over his shoulder. Supper's at 6. Don't expect anything fancy. Evelyn watched him go, then turned to face the house that was apparently hers now. The front door stuck. She had to shove it with her shoulder to get it open. Inside, the air was stale and hot. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room all at once. A wood stove in the corner, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, shelves holding mismatched dishes and supplies. Everything was functional. Nothing was comfortable. There were 2 other doors. One led to a small bedroom with a narrow bed and a single window. The other led to what must have been Cole's room. She didn't go in. She set her trunk down in the smaller room and sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the full weight of what she'd done settling onto her shoulders. 3 months ago, she'd been living in her sister's house in Philadelphia, working as a seamstress and trying to pretend she wasn't a burden. Her brother-in-law had made it clear she wasn't welcome. Her sister had made it clear she couldn't help. The money was running out. The options were running out. Then she'd seen the advertisement in the paper. Rancher in Montana Territory seeking wife. Must be hardworking, practical, and willing to build a life on the frontier. No romantic notions necessary. She'd written that night. Now she was here, in a house that smelled like dust and loneliness, on a ranch that looked like it was barely holding on, married, or about to be married, to a man who looked at her like she was just another problem to solve. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else. Something harder and sharper. She stood up, smoothed her skirts, and went to find water to wash her face. Supper was beans and cornbread, cooked by Cole and served without ceremony. They ate in silence at the small table, the only sound the scrape of spoons against tin plates. "We getting married tomorrow," Cole said finally. "Reverend comes through once a month. He'll be in town in the morning." "All right. After that, you'll be working. I got a ranch hand, name's Pete, comes by most days. He'll show you what needs doing." "I assumed I'd be working." "Good." He pushed his plate away. "Most women come out here thinking it's going to be some kind of adventure. Then they figure out it's just hard, and they leave. I'm not most women." "We'll see." Evelyn set down her spoon, her patience finally fraying. "Mr. Mercer, I traveled 2,000 miles to be here. I left behind everything I knew. I brought chickens because I thought they'd be useful, not because I'm some naive girl playing at frontier life. I'm here because I need this to work just as much as you do. So if you're waiting for me to break, you're going to be disappointed." He studied her across the table, his expression unreadable. "You got spine," he said finally. "That's something. It's more than something." "Maybe." He stood and carried his plate to the wash basin. "Bedroom on the left is yours. I'm on the right. We clear on that?" "Perfectly." "Good. I'll wake you at dawn." He left her sitting there, disappearing into his room and closing the door behind him. Evelyn sat in the growing darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch settling around her. Somewhere outside, the chickens clucked softly. The wind rattled the loose boards on the porch. In the distance, a coyote howled. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it. What? Dawn came early and loud. Evelyn woke to the sound of boots on the porch and a voice calling her name. She dressed quickly in the dim light, fumbling with buttons and laces, and stumbled out into the main room. Cole was already gone. She found him outside, working with a horse in the corral. A man she didn't recognize, older, wiry, with a face like tanned leather, was mending a section of fence nearby. "That's Pete," Cole called when he saw her. "Pete, this is Evelyn. She's the new wife." Pete looked up, squinted at her, and went back to his work. "Figured." "Come here," Cole said. Evelyn crossed the yard, trying not to look as off balance as she felt. "You ever milked a cow?" "No." "Collected eggs?" "Once or twice." "Carried water?" "Yes." "Good. Chickens first, then water, then you'll help Pete with the garden. If there's time after that, I'll show you the rest." "What about breakfast?" "You cook it, you eat it, I already ate." He turned back to the horse, dismissing her. Evelyn stood there for a moment, feeling something hot and tight in her chest. Then she turned and went to find the chickens. The coop Cole had set up was rough but functional. A lean-to against the side of the barn, with straw on the ground and a few nesting boxes. The birds were already awake, scratching and pecking. When they saw her, they rushed over, clucking expectantly. She smiled despite herself. "At least somebody's happy to see me," she muttered. She found a bucket, filled it with the feed Cole had left, and scattered it for them. While they ate, she checked the nesting boxes and found 3 eggs. Small, brown, still warm. It wasn't much, but it was hers. By the time she finished with the water, hauling bucket after bucket from the well to the house, the barn, the trough, her arms were aching and her back was screaming, but she didn't stop. Pete found her in the garden, staring at the patch of withered plants and struggling to figure out where to even start. "Needs water," he said. "Needs weeding. Needs a hell of a lot more than that, but we start with water." "I don't know what I'm doing," Evelyn admitted. "Figured." He handed her a hoe. "But you'll learn, or you won't. Either way, plants don't care." They worked in silence for an hour, the sun climbing higher, the heat building. Pete showed her how to break up the hard soil, how to pull weeds without tearing up the roots of what little was still growing. He didn't talk much, but he didn't treat her like she was stupid either. That was something. By midday, Evelyn was filthy, exhausted, and sunburned. But the garden looked better. Not good, but better. Pete straightened, wiping his face with a rag. "You got grit, I'll give you that." "Is that a compliment?" "Out here?" "Yeah." He left her to finish up and headed toward the barn. Evelyn stood alone in the garden, looking at her dirt-stained hands, feeling blisters forming on her palms. She thought about Philadelphia, about her sister's clean house and soft beds, about the life she'd left behind. She didn't miss it, not even a little. The wedding happened fast. The next morning, Cole hitched the wagon and they rode into town in silence. The Reverend was waiting at the small church, barely more than a one-room schoolhouse with a cross nailed to the door. There were no guests, no flowers, no music. "Dearly beloved," the Reverend began, his voice flat with repetition. Evelyn stood beside Cole, acutely aware of the space between them. He didn't touch her, didn't look at her, just stared straight ahead like he was enduring something unpleasant but necessary. "Do you, Cole Mercer, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Evelyn Carter, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She hesitated, not because she was uncertain, but because the weight of it hit her all at once. This was permanent. This was real. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife." The Reverend closed his book. "You may kiss the bride." Cole turned to her, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned in and kissed her, brief, formal, completely devoid of feeling. It was over in seconds. "Congratulations," the Reverend said. "That'll be $2. Cole paid him, signed the license, and walked out. Evelyn followed. On the ride back, she stared at the gold band on her finger. Simple, worn, probably his mother's. It felt heavy. "You regret it yet?" Cole asked, breaking the silence. "No." "Give it time." She turned to look at him. "Do you regret it?" "Ask me in a month." The wagon hit a rut, jolting them both. Neither spoke again until they reached the ranch. The days blurred together after that. Evelyn woke before dawn, worked until her body gave out, then collapsed into bed and did it all again. She learned to milk the cow Cole kept in the barn, a bad-tempered creature named Rosie, who kicked the bucket more often than not. She learned to bake bread in the cantankerous wood stove, burning 3 loaves before she got it right. She learned which chickens were the best layers and which one, a mean little hen she named Beatrice, would peck your hand if you weren't careful. She learned the rhythms of the ranch, the way Cole disappeared for hours, checking fences and moving cattle, the way Pete showed up every morning at 7 and left every evening at 5, never staying for supper, the way the land demanded everything and gave back almost nothing. And she learned Cole. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't kind either. He was just there. A presence in the house, solid and immovable. He spoke only when necessary, ate without tasting, worked without stopping. At night he disappeared into his room and closed the door, and Evelyn did the same. They were married, they lived together, but they were strangers. Until the day the fence broke. It happened in the 3rd week. Evelyn was hanging laundry when she heard shouting from the pasture. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran. Cole was in the corral, fighting to control a panicked horse. The fence, already weak, had given way, and half the herd was scattering toward the open range. Pete was already on horseback, trying to head them off. "Evelyn," Cole shouted, "close the gate." She didn't think, just ran to the gate and threw her weight against it, dragging it closed just as 3 steers came thundering toward her. They veered off at the last second, snorting and wild-eyed. "Hold it!" Cole yelled. She held it, her boots digging into the dirt, her shoulders screaming as the steers tested the gate. She could hear Cole behind her, cursing and shouting, trying to calm the horse. Could hear Pete's voice in the distance, rough and urgent. Then finally, silence. The steers settled. The horse stopped fighting. The crisis passed. Evelyn let go of the gate and stumbled back, her hands shaking. Cole appeared beside her, breathing hard. "You hurt?" "No." "You sure?" "I'm sure." He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "You didn't run." "Where would I run to?" "Most women would have." "I'm not most women." This time he did smile. Just barely. Just enough. "No," he said. "I guess you're not." That night, for the first time, they ate supper together and talked. Not about anything important, just small things. The weather, the cattle, the fence that needed replacing. But it was something. "You did good today," Cole said, pushing his plate away. "Thank you." "Pete thinks so too. He doesn't say much, but he noticed." "He's been helpful." He's been here longer than I have. Worked for the man who owned this place before me. What happened to him? Died. Winter of '79. Left the place to his nephew, who sold it to me for cheap because he didn't want it. Cole leaned back in his chair. I've been trying to bring it back ever since. Is it working? Some days. He looked at her. You really going to stay? I really am. Even if it stays this hard? Especially if it stays this hard. He nodded slowly. Then I guess we got a deal, Mrs. Mercer. It was the first time he'd called her that. It felt like the beginning of something. But, By the end of the first month, Evelyn had settled into a routine that would have killed her a month earlier. She woke at dawn, started the fire, made coffee, fed the chickens, collected eggs, milked Rosie, made breakfast, usually biscuits and whatever was left from the night before. After that, the day opened up into 100 small tasks: mending, cleaning, cooking, hauling, fixing. The garden was coming back to life under her care, producing enough to make meals slightly less monotonous. The chickens were thriving, laying more eggs than she'd expected. She'd stopped waiting for Cole to tell her what to do, started figuring it out herself. One afternoon, she found a stack of old lumber behind the barn and decided to build a better chicken coop. She had no idea what she was doing, but she'd watched Pete work enough to understand the basics. She was halfway through framing the structure when Cole found her. What's this? A coop. The lean-to's fine for now, but come winter they'll need something better. He walked around her work, inspecting it. You know how to build? I'm learning. That corner's not square. I know. I'll fix it. He crouched down, adjusted the angle, and drove a nail in with 3 clean strikes. There. Now it's square. Thank you. You want help? She looked up surprised. You have time? I'll make time. They worked together until the sun started to set, barely talking, just building. When they finally stopped, the coop had walls and a roof. It wasn't pretty, but it was solid. You got a good eye, Cole said, wiping his hands. Most people can't see what something's supposed to be before it's done. I'm good at making things out of nothing. Yeah. He looked at her. I'm starting to see that. That night, Evelyn lay in bed and realized she hadn't thought about Philadelphia in over a week. She was too busy building something here. The first real test came in early October. The temperature dropped overnight, a sudden brutal shift that turned the morning air sharp and mean. Evelyn woke to frost on the windows and Cole already moving through the house, grim-faced. Storm's coming, he said. Big one. We got maybe a day to get ready. What do you need me to do? Everything. They worked like the world was ending, bringing in firewood, securing the barn, moving the cattle closer to shelter. Pete showed up before dawn and didn't leave until dark, the 3 of them moving in frantic coordination. Evelyn's hands went numb, her face burned from the wind. She didn't stop. By the time the storm hit, they were as ready as they were going to be. It lasted 3 days. 3 days of howling wind and driving snow. 3 days trapped inside, rationing firewood, listening to the ranch groan under the weight of winter. Evelyn cooked what she could, stretched their supplies, kept the fire going. Cole went out twice a day to check the animals, coming back each time half frozen and silent. On the 3rd night, the wind finally died. Cole came in from the barn, shaking snow from his coat, his face raw and red. We lost 2 calves, he said quietly, but the rest made it. Evelyn handed him coffee. The chickens? All alive. That coop you built held. She felt something loosen in her chest. Good. They sat together by the fire, not talking, just existing in the warmth. You didn't panic, Cole said finally. Would it have helped? No. Then why bother? He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like respect in his eyes, maybe more than respect. You're tougher than I thought, he said. You're not the first person to underestimate me. I'm starting to think that was a mistake. It was. He almost smiled. Yeah, it was. Winter deepened, but the ranch held. The coop Evelyn built kept the chickens warm. The garden, now put to bed for the season, had given them enough preserved vegetables to supplement their stores. The cattle, though fewer, were healthy. Pete started staying for supper once a week, and the house felt less empty. Evelyn found herself settling into the rhythms of this life. The early mornings, the hard work, the silence that wasn't lonely anymore, just quiet. And Cole. He'd started lingering after meals, talking about the ranch, asking her opinion, started teaching her things, how to read the weather, how to tell when a cow was sick, how to mend harness leather. He didn't say much, but he didn't have to. She could feel the distance between them shrinking. One night in late November, she was mending a shirt by lamplight when he spoke. "You ever regret it?" She looked up. "Regret what?" "This. Coming here. Marrying me." "No." She set down the shirt. "Do you?" "I thought I would," he admitted. "Thought you'd be another thing I had to take care of. Another burden." But you're not." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You carry your weight, more than that. This place is better because you're here." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "Thank you." "I mean it." He met her eyes. "I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't you." "Is that a good thing?" "Yeah." He nodded. "Yeah, it is." They sat there in the lamplight, the fire crackling, something unspoken but understood passing between them. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was the beginning of something that might be. By December, the ranch had transformed. The chicken coop was finished and insulated, the hens laying steadily despite the cold. The preserved vegetables from the garden were holding up. The barn repairs Cole and Pete had made were keeping the animals safe. Small things, maybe. But out here, small things meant survival. Evelyn stood on the porch one evening, wrapped in a shawl, watching the sun set over the mountains. Behind her, she could hear Cole moving around inside, starting supper. The sound was comforting, familiar. She thought about the woman who'd stepped off that stagecoach 4 months ago. Scared, desperate, uncertain. She barely recognized her. This version of herself was stronger, harder, but also more alive than she'd ever been in Philadelphia. The door opened behind her. "You coming in?" Cole asked. "It's freezing." "In a minute." He stepped out onto the porch beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is." "Good different or bad different?" "Good." She turned to look at him. "Definitely good." He held her gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm glad you stayed," he said quietly. "So am I." This time, when he kissed her, it wasn't formal or distant. It was real. And when they went back inside, it wasn't to separate rooms. It was together. The first part of their story ended that night. But the ranch, the life they were building, the partnership that had started as nothing more than a desperate arrangement, that was only beginning. And in the spring, when the land thawed and the work started again, they would face it not as strangers forced together by necessity, but as something stronger. As partners. As husband and wife. As two people who'd chosen each other, not once, but every single day. Spring came late to Montana that year, arriving in fits and starts like it couldn't make up its mind. The snow retreated grudgingly, leaving behind mud that swallowed boots and froze solid overnight. By early March, Evelyn had learned to read the sky the way Cole did, watching for the particular shade of gray that meant more snow, the thin streaks of cloud that promised wind. She was checking the chicken coop when she heard the wagon. Not theirs, someone else's. Cole appeared from his barn, his hand resting on the rifle he kept near the door. Old habit. Out here, you didn't assume visitors meant good news. The wagon came into view, a single horse pulling a flatbed loaded with supplies. The driver was a man Evelyn didn't recognize, maybe 50, with a beard that had gone more salt than pepper. "Morning," the man called, pulling the horse to a stop. "This the Mercer place?" "It is," Cole said, not moving. "What can I do for you?" "Name's Frank Bishop. I run the feed store in town. Got a delivery for you, but I wanted to talk business first." Cole's shoulders loosened slightly. "What kind of business?" Frank climbed down from the wagon, moving like his back hurt. "Heard through Pete you got chickens. Good layers, that true?" "We got chickens," Evelyn said, stepping forward. 7 hens. They're laying about 4 to 5 eggs a day right now. Frank's eyebrows went up. 7 hens giving you that much? "Good stock," Evelyn said. "And they're well fed." "I'll bet they are." Frank scratched his beard. "Here's my proposition. Town's growing. We got more people moving in and eggs are hard to come by. If you can supply me regular, say, 2 dozen a week to start, I'll pay you fair price and handle the selling myself. Evelyn glanced at Cole. He was watching her, waiting. What's fair price? She asked. 15 cents a dozen. 20. Frank blinked. That's steep. That's what they're worth. You'll sell them for 30, maybe more. 20's fair. A slow smile spread across Frank's face. You drive a hard bargain, Mrs. Mercer. I drive a fair one. 18 cents, final offer. Evelyn considered. 18 cents, and you take however many we can supply. Some weeks might be more than 2 dozen. Deal. Frank stuck out his hand and Evelyn shook it. His grip was firm, respectful. I'll come by every Monday to collect. That work? That works? After Frank left with his feed delivery, Cole walked over to where Evelyn stood watching the wagon disappear down the road. 20 cents, he said. I would have taken 17. But you asked for 20. Always ask high. They expect it. She turned to look at him. My father taught me that. Only useful thing he ever did. Cole was quiet for a moment. You just made us a steady income stream. It's not much. It's more than we had yesterday. He touched her shoulder, brief but deliberate. Good work. That night, Evelyn lay awake thinking about eggs and chickens and the strange satisfaction of negotiating her first business deal in Montana. It wasn't Philadelphia society, where women managed households but never commerce. Out here, the lines were different, blurrier. She liked it. The egg business changed things in small ways. Every Monday, Frank showed up and left with whatever Evelyn had for him, always paying in cash. She kept the money in a tin under the floorboard in her room, their room now, though she still thought of it as hers sometimes. By April, she'd saved enough to order more chickens from a breeder 2 towns over. You sure about this? Cole asked when the order arrived. 10 more hens and 2 roosters, shipped in crates that smelled like panic and feathers. I'm sure. If we're going to do this, we do it right. That's a lot of feed. And a lot of eggs. She opened one of the crates carefully, lifting out a nervous hen. Trust me. I do, he said, and meant it. The expanded flock meant expanding the coop again. This time, Pete helped from the start, and they finished in 3 days instead of 3 weeks. The new chickens settled in, and within a month, Evelyn was supplying Frank with 4 dozen eggs a week. The money wasn't much, but it was steady, and steady meant everything. One evening in late April, Cole came in from checking the cattle looking troubled. What's wrong? Evelyn asked. Fence is failing on the north pasture. Whole section needs replacing. How much will that cost? He told her. It was more than they had. Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron, thinking, what if we don't replace it all at once? Do the worst sections first, then the rest as we can afford it? That's what I've been doing. We're running out of sections to delay. Then we need more income. I'm aware. She turned to face him. The chickens are doing well. What else could we do? Cole sat down heavily at the table. I've been thinking about that. Pete mentioned there's demand for fresh vegetables in town. The general store brings in dried goods, but nobody's growing anything local. Because the season's too short, Evelyn said slowly, and the soil's hard. Yeah, but we got that garden producing last year. Barely. Barely's better than nothing. She sat down across from him. What if we expanded it? Really worked it? I could handle most of the labor. You're already handling the chickens. I can do both. Cole studied her face. You're serious? Do I look like I'm joking? He almost smiled. No, you look like you're planning something. I am. We are. She leaned forward. We can't just keep fixing what breaks. We need to build something that works, that grows. That's a risk. Staying small is a bigger one. He was quiet for a long time, turning it over. Finally, he nodded. All right, we try it. But you need help. I can't do it. I'm already stretched with the cattle. We'd have to hire someone. We don't have money for that. No, but we might be able to trade labor. I'll ask around. 2 days later, Cole came back from town with a young man named Samuel riding beside him. Sam was maybe 19, skinny in a way that suggested he hadn't been eating regular, with sun-bleached hair and wary eyes. This is Sam, Cole said. He's looking for work. I told him we can't pay cash, but we can offer meals and a place to sleep in the barn. Can you work a garden? Evelyn asked. I can work anything, Sam said. Just need the chance. She liked him immediately. You're hired. Sam turned out to be worth 3 men. He worked from sunrise to dark without complaining, asked smart questions, and learned fast. Within a week, he and Evelyn had doubled the size of the garden plot, breaking up soil that hadn't been turned in years. You ever done this before? Evelyn asked one afternoon, watching him work. My ma had a garden back in Kansas, before we lost the farm. What happened? Drought. Then the bank. He drove the shovel into the ground with more force than necessary. Same story as everybody. You got family still there? No, ma'am. Ma died 2 years back, Pa before that. It's just me now. Evelyn understood that kind of alone. Well, you got a place here as long as you want it. He looked up, surprised. You mean that? I don't say things I don't mean. Something shifted in his face. Relief, maybe, or the beginning of trust. Thank you, Mrs. Mercer. Call me Evelyn. We're not formal around here. By May, the garden was transformed. Rows of potatoes, carrots, beans, squash. Lettuce and radishes already coming up. Evelyn had ordered seeds with some of the egg money, gambling on varieties that could handle short seasons. Every evening, she and Sam walked the rows, checking for pests, pulling weeds, planning the next stage. Cole watched from a distance, saying little but missing nothing. You like him, he said one night. Sam? He's a good worker. That's not what I meant. Evelyn set down the sock she was darning. He reminds me of me. When I got here, just needing someone to give him a chance. You gave him more than a chance. You gave him a home. So did you. I gave you a job. You made it a home. He crossed the room and sat beside her. There's a difference. She leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his shoulder. We're building something here, aren't we? Yeah, we are. The garden's first real test came in early June, when a late frost threatened to kill everything they'd planted. Evelyn woke to Cole shaking her shoulder in the dark. Frost coming, we need to cover the plants. They worked by lantern light, all 3 of them. Evelyn, Cole, and Sam, draping old blankets and tarps over the vulnerable seedlings. The air was sharp and cold, their breath visible in the darkness. Evelyn's fingers went numb, but she kept moving. This everything? Cole called. Everything we can cover, Sam said. The rest we'll just have to hope. They stood together in the garden, surrounded by ghostly shapes of covered plants, waiting for dawn. Will it be enough? Evelyn asked. Don't know, Cole said, but it's all we got. The sun came up slow and pale. When they pulled back the covers, most of the plants had survived. Some were damaged, their leaves blackened and curled, but most had made it. We'll lose maybe a quarter of the crop, Sam said, walking the rows, but the rest should be fine. Evelyn wanted to cry with relief. Instead, she laughed. What's funny? Cole asked. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She looked at the garden, at the work they'd saved. A year ago, I didn't know what frost did to plants. Now I'm staying up all night trying to save them. You care about it now, Sam said simply. Yeah, I do. By mid-June, the garden was producing enough that Evelyn made her second deal with Frank Bishop. He'd take whatever vegetables they could spare. Same arrangement as the eggs. Word spread quickly. Within 2 weeks, people were stopping by the ranch directly, asking to buy fresh lettuce, radishes, new potatoes. We should set up in town, Sam suggested one evening. Like a market stand. 1 day a week. Evelyn looked at Cole. What do you think? I think you two are going to work yourselves to death. Is that a yes or a no? He shook his head, but he was smiling. It's a yes, but I'm coming with you. I don't trust those town folks not to take advantage. They set up the first market stand on a Saturday in late June, just a table under a tarp loaded with whatever the garden had produced that week. Evelyn handled the selling, Cole handled the money, and Sam kept running back to the wagon for more supply. People came. More than Evelyn had expected. These carrots fresh? One woman asked suspiciously. Pulled them this morning, Evelyn said. How much? 5 cents a bunch. The woman bought 3 bunches. A man in a suit bought all the lettuce they had. A young mother bought potatoes and beans and asked when they'd have more. By noon, they'd sold out completely. Cole counted the money twice, like he couldn't believe it. $32, he said quietly. And one morning, Evelyn added. Sam was grinning. We could do this every week. We will, Evelyn said. On the ride home, Cole was quiet in a way that made Evelyn nervous. "What's wrong?" she finally asked. "Nothing's wrong." "Then why aren't you talking?" He glanced at her. "I'm thinking about how much has changed. 6 months ago, this place was barely holding on. Now we got chickens turning profit, a garden feeding half the town, and enough money coming in that I can actually fix things instead of just patching them." "That's good, isn't it?" "It's good. It's just—" He trailed off. "What?" "I'm not used to things going right." Evelyn reached over and took his hand. "Get used to it." But nothing ever went right for long. In July, the trouble started with a man named Garrett Finch. He owned the biggest ranch in the area, ran cattle on twice as much land as anyone else, and had opinions about how things should be done. Evelyn had seen him in town a few times, always loud, always throwing money around, always making sure people knew who he was. She didn't like him. He showed up at their ranch on a Tuesday afternoon, riding a horse that probably cost more than their entire herd. Pete saw him coming and went to find Cole. Evelyn was in the garden with Sam when she heard voices rising from near the house. "Stay here," she told Sam, and headed toward the noise. Cole and Finch were facing off near the barn, Pete standing a few feet back with his arms crossed. "I'm just saying it's unusual," Finch was saying, his tone suggesting he thought it was more than unusual. A woman running a business, selling in town, taking customers that could be buying from established operations. "She's not taking anything," Cole said, his voice level but hard. "She's offering something nobody else is. Fresh vegetables." Finch said it like it was a joke. "That's not a business, that's a hobby." Evelyn stepped forward. "Is there something I can help you with, Mr. Finch?" He turned to look at her, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Mercer, I was just telling your husband that it might be wise to reconsider this little enterprise of yours. Could cause complications." "What kind of complications?" "Market complications, price complications, the kind that make it harder for everyone to do business." "I'm selling vegetables and eggs," Evelyn said slowly. "I'm not undercutting anyone." "Not yet, but markets are delicate things. You start flooding them with cheap product, prices drop for everyone." "Our prices are fair. If yours are higher, that's your problem, not mine." Finch's smile vanished. "You're new here, Mrs. Mercer. You don't understand how things work." "I understand just fine." Cole moved slightly, positioning himself between Evelyn and Finch. "I think you should leave now. I'm offering friendly advice." "We didn't ask for it." Finch looked at Cole, then at Evelyn, then back at Cole. "Suit yourself. But don't say I didn't warn you." He rode off, kicking up dust deliberately as he went. "What was that about?" Evelyn asked. "Intimidation," Pete said. "Finch doesn't like anyone doing well unless he's getting a cut." "Can he actually cause problems?" "He can try," Cole said. "But we're not doing anything wrong. We'll keep doing what we're doing." Evelyn wanted to believe it was that simple. It wasn't. The following week, Frank Bishop came by on Monday as usual, but he looked uncomfortable. "I can't take the eggs this week," he said. "Why not?" "Got a new supplier. Finch set up a deal with a farm 2 counties over. Says he can get me eggs cheaper." "How much cheaper?" 10 cents a dozen. Evelyn felt her stomach drop. "That's below cost. Nobody can produce eggs at that price and make money." "I know, but he's subsidizing them. Says it's temporary, just to stabilize the market." "He's trying to drive me out." Frank looked miserable. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I got a business to run. I can't afford to say no to Finch." After he left, Evelyn stood in the yard feeling something cold and hard settling in her chest. Cole found her there. "He cut you off?" "Yeah." "Bastard." Cole kicked at the dirt. "We'll find another buyer." "There is no other buyer. Finch controls the feed store, the general store, and half the businesses in town. If he's undercutting us, nobody's going to risk buying from us." "Then we sell direct, like we're doing with the vegetables." "That's not enough. We need regular income." She turned to face him. "We need those egg sales." "So what do we do?" Evelyn thought about it, about Finch and his expensive horse, and his assumption that he could bully them into quitting, about everything she'd built here, all the work she'd put in. "We undercut him back," she said. "How?" "We can't afford to sell at a loss." "We don't sell at a loss, we expand. Add more chickens, bring the cost per egg down, and sell direct to customers for less than Finch is charging the stores." "That's a lot of chickens." Then we get a lot of chickens. Cole stared at her. You're serious? He wants a fight? We'll give him one. Evelyn, I'm not backing down. I didn't come this far to let some rich rancher decide what I can and can't do. He was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. All right, how many chickens are we talking about? Double what we have, maybe more. That's going to take time and money. We have the vegetable income, and we can build more coops. She grabbed his hand. We can do this. I know we can. Yeah, Cole said slowly. I believe you. They spent the next 3 weeks transforming the ranch. Sam built 2 more coops with materials they bought on credit. Evelyn ordered 40 more chickens, negotiating hard with the breeder until she got a price she could work with. Cole reinforced the fencing and set up a better feeding system. When the new chickens arrived, the ranch was chaos. Feathers everywhere, constant noise, the smell of too many birds in too small a space until they got organized. This is insane, Pete said, watching Evelyn sort chickens into their new coops. This is necessary, Evelyn corrected. Finch is going to be furious. Good. By August, they were producing enough eggs that Evelyn could sell them door to door in town for 12 cents a dozen, less than the stores were charging, more than it cost to produce. Word spread fast. Within 2 weeks, she had a regular route of customers who waited for her to show up every Saturday. Finch found out, of course. This time he didn't come himself. He sent 2 of his ranch hands, big men who showed up on a Thursday afternoon when Cole was out checking fences and Pete had gone into town. Evelyn was in the garden with Sam when she saw them riding up. Go get Cole, she told Sam quietly. He's 2 miles out. Then ride fast. Sam took off toward the barn. Evelyn walked toward the house, trying to look calm. The 2 men dismounted, taking their time. Mrs. Mercer, the taller one said, Mr. Finch sent us with a message. I'm listening. He thinks maybe you didn't understand his advice about market complications. I understood just fine. See, that's the problem. You're still selling eggs, undercutting his arrangements, making him look bad. I'm running a business. If that makes him look bad, he should run his better. The man's expression hardened. That's not how this works. Then explain it to me. You stop selling eggs. You stop selling vegetables. You pack up your little market stand and go back to being a rancher's wife, otherwise things might get difficult. Is that a threat? It's friendly advice. Evelyn felt her pulse hammering, but she kept her voice steady. Tell Mr. Finch I appreciate his concern, but I'm going to keep doing exactly what I've been doing, and if he has a problem with that, he can come talk to me himself instead of sending thugs. The shorter man took a step forward. You got a real smart mouth, lady. And you're trespassing. Leave. Now. Or what? Or I'll make you. The man laughed. You and what army? Behind them, a rifle cocked. Everyone turned. Sam was standing on the porch, holding Cole's Winchester, the barrel pointed directly at the 2 men. She's got me, Sam said. His voice was shaking, but his hands were steady. That enough? The 2 men looked at each other. This isn't over, the tall one said. Yeah, it is, Sam said. Now get off our land. They mounted up and rode off slow, making a point of not looking hurried. When they were gone, Sam lowered the rifle and sat down hard on the porch steps. I can't believe I just did that, he said. You did good, Evelyn said, her own hands shaking now. Real good. Cole rode in 10 minutes later, Sam having intercepted him on the road. When he heard what happened, his face went white, then red. They threatened you. They tried to scare me. Didn't work. This is escalating. I know. We need to be smart about this. I am being smart. I'm not letting him win. Cole grabbed her shoulders. I'm not asking you to quit. I'm asking you to be careful. These men, Finch's men, they don't play fair. Neither do I. Evelyn, I mean it. We've built something here. I'm not letting it go because some rich man decided he doesn't like competition. Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her close, holding her tight. All right, he said quietly. Then we do this together, but we do it smart. That night, they made a plan. They'd keep selling, but they'd vary the routes, never the same schedule twice. Sam would come with Evelyn to town, and Cole would make sure people knew they were armed. They'd also start documenting everything, every threat, every incident, every attempt at intimidation. If this gets legal, we need evidence, Cole said. You think it'll come to that? I think Finch isn't used to losing, and people like that don't stop until they're forced to. He was right. The harassment continued through August and into September. Fences cut, chickens disappearing, tools going missing. Nothing big enough to involve the law, but enough to make life harder. Evelyn refused to bend. She kept selling, kept building, kept pushing forward. And slowly, things started to shift. Other small ranchers and farmers, seeing what she was doing, started coming to her for advice. How to expand their operations, how to negotiate better prices, how to stand up to pressure from bigger outfits. Evelyn helped them. Not because she had to, but because she understood what it was like to be dismissed and underestimated. By late September, there was an informal network of small producers all supporting each other, sharing resources, coordinating sales. Finch's grip on the local economy started to loosen, and he noticed. The final confrontation came in early October. Finch himself rode onto their property, alone this time, and asked to speak with both Cole and Evelyn. They met him in the yard, wary. "I'm here to make you an offer," Finch said without preamble. "We're not interested," Cole said. "You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to." Finch ignored him and looked at Evelyn. "You're good at this. Better than I expected. I want to buy you out. Your egg operation, your customer routes, everything. I'll pay fair market value, and you can go back to running the ranch without all this hassle." "No," Evelyn said. "I'm offering you a clean exit." "I don't want an exit. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," Evelyn said. "You are. You assumed I'd fail or quit. I didn't. Now you're trying to buy something you can't bully away. But it's not for sale, none of it." Finch's jaw tightened. "You're making an enemy you can't afford." "Seems to me you're the one who can't afford it. I'm not the one losing customers." For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Finch laughed. It sounded surprised. "You got steel in you, Mrs. Mercer. I'll give you that." "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is." He turned his horse. "All right, you win. I'll call off my people, but this isn't over." "Yes, it is," Evelyn said. "You just don't know it yet." He rode off without another word. Cole waited until he was out of sight, then turned to Evelyn. "Did that just happen?" "I think so." "You think he meant it? About calling off his people?" "Probably. Men like Finch, they only respect strength. Once you prove you won't break, they move on to easier targets." "How do you know that?" "My father was like him, just with less money and more anger." She took a breath. "I learned early how to deal with bullies." Cole pulled her close. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "Too late. You already did. About 100 times. And yet you married me anyway." "Yeah, I did." They stood together in the yard, the ranch around them, chickens clucking, garden thriving, fences mended, everything they'd built holding strong. It wasn't perfect. It was hard and messy and required constant work, but it was theirs. And that night, lying in bed beside Cole, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling into darkness, Evelyn realized something. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was winning. The victory over Finch should have felt bigger than it did. Evelyn woke the next morning to the same roosters crowing, the same cold floor under her feet, the same endless list of tasks waiting. Winning didn't mean the work stopped. It just meant they could keep doing it without someone breathing down their necks. Cole was already up, standing at the window with his coffee, watching the sun come up over the eastern fence line. "You sleep at all?" Evelyn asked. "Some." He didn't turn around. "Been thinking." "About?" "What comes next?" She crossed the room and stood beside him. The ranch looked different in the early light, still rough, still demanding, but undeniably theirs. "We keep building, same as we've been doing." "It's not that simple anymore." He finally looked at her. "Word's going to spread about what happened with Finch. People are going to expect things from us now." "What kind of things?" "Leadership. Guidance. You help those other small farmers stand up for themselves. They're going to keep coming to you." "So I help them. What's wrong with that?" "Nothing's wrong with it. But it changes what we are. We're not just trying to survive anymore. We're becoming something else." Evelyn understood what he was dancing around. They'd crossed some invisible line. The quiet life they'd been building, just the two of them, making it work, was expanding whether they wanted it to or not. "You want to pull back?" she asked. "No, I want to be ready for what's coming." "Then we get ready." He set down his coffee and pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "You ever get tired?" every single day. But you keep going. So do you. Yeah. He kissed her forehead. Guess we're both too stubborn to quit. They stood there for another minute, stealing time they didn't really have, before the day pulled them apart again. By mid-October, the ranch had settled into a new rhythm. The egg business was thriving. The garden was producing its final harvest before the frost, and the cattle, though still not as many as Cole wanted, were healthy and gaining weight. Sam had proven himself essential, handling tasks without being asked and showing a knack for fixing things that surprised everyone, including himself. Pete had started bringing his grandson around on weekends, a quiet boy of about 12 named Thomas, who watched everything with wide eyes and barely spoke. Evelyn gave him small jobs, collecting eggs, pulling weeds, hauling water, and paid him in cookies and the occasional nickel. Kid needs something to do, Pete explained. His ma died last spring. He's been lost ever since. He can come around any time, Evelyn said. We'll find work for him. The first time Thomas smiled, a small tentative thing, when one of the hens laid an egg directly in his hand, Evelyn felt something crack open in her chest. They were building more than a business here. They were building something that mattered. But the frontier had a way of reminding you that security was temporary. The trouble started with the weather. November came in hard and mean, temperatures dropping fast and staying down. The first snow arrived 2 weeks earlier than usual, 6 inches overnight that caught everyone off guard. This is bad, Cole said, standing on the porch and looking at the white-covered pasture. If this keeps up, we're in for a brutal winter. We made it through last year. Last year we had half the livestock and a quarter of the expenses. This year, we got a lot more to keep alive. He wasn't wrong. The expanded chicken operation meant more feed, more water, more constant work to keep them warm and producing. The garden they'd worked so hard on was buried under snow, the last of the harvest barely saved in time. We'll make it work, Evelyn said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Yeah, we will. But he looked worried. The second storm hit a week later, then a third. By the end of November, they were dealing with snowdrifts taller than Evelyn and temperatures that made simply existing outdoors an act of endurance. The chickens suffered first. Despite their best efforts, production dropped by half, then 3/4. The hens huddled together for warmth, too cold and stressed to lay regularly. We're going to lose customers if we can't deliver, Evelyn said, watching the sparse collection of eggs she'd gathered that morning. Can't help the weather, Cole said. No, but we can help the chickens. She turned to Sam, who was stomping snow off his boots. What if we insulated the coops better? Added more straw, maybe built windbreaks? Might help, Sam said, but it's going to take time and materials. Then we do it fast. Cole, can you? Already planning it, he said. Pete's bringing lumber tomorrow. We'll get it done. They worked through freezing temperatures and biting wind, building walls around the coops, stuffing every crack with straw, hanging old blankets over the doors. It was miserable work. Evelyn's fingers went numb a dozen times a day. Sam developed a cough that wouldn't quit. Cole pushed himself until he was moving like an old man, his back seizing up from the cold and the labor. But it worked. The chickens started laying again. Not as much as before, but enough to keep the business alive. The cattle were a different problem. They needed to graze, but the snow was too deep. Cole and Pete started hauling hay out to the pasture twice a day, breaking ice on the water trough, checking each animal for signs of cold stress or injury. We're going through feed too fast, Cole said one night, doing calculations on a piece of paper. At this rate, we'll run out by February. Can we buy more? Not at current prices. Everything gets expensive in winter. Then we ration what we have, make it last. Cole rubbed his face. If we ration too much, the cattle lose weight. We lose them come spring when we're trying to sell. And if we run out of feed early, we lose them anyway. Evelyn sat down across from him. We're trapped either way. Yeah. They sat in silence, the weight of it settling between them. There might be one option, Cole said slowly. What? We sell some of the cattle now, before Christmas. Prices aren't great, but we'd get something. Use that money to buy feed for the rest. Evelyn thought about it. How many would we have to sell? Maybe a third of the herd. That's everything we've been building toward. I know. But if we try to save them all and lose everything instead, we're worse off than if we'd sold some now. She hated that he was right. You're sure there's no other way? I've been over it 100 times. This is the best option we got. All right, then we do it. The decision made, Cole rode into town the next day to arrange the sale. He came back looking grim. Finch was there, he said. Made me an offer for the whole herd. Low, but not insulting. You didn't take it. No. But he said if I change my mind, offer stands through the end of the month. Cole hung up his coat. He also said something else. What? That he respects what we're doing. Said he'd been watching, and we're tougher than he thought. Evelyn didn't know what to do with that. He say anything else? Just that winter's going to be hard on everyone, and the smart ones know when to fold. We're not folding. I told him that. They sold a third of the cattle to a buyer from 2 towns over, got a fair price, and used every penny to stock up on feed and supplies. It hurt watching those animals go, but it hurt less than the alternative would have. December brought a brief respite. The storm stopped, the temperature rose just enough to make outside work bearable, and for a few precious weeks, they caught their breath. Evelyn used the time to rebuild their egg supply, working with Sam to get production back up. They also started planning for spring, what to plant, where to expand, how to grow, without overextending. You ever think about just stopping? Sam asked one afternoon. They were in the barn organizing supplies. Like, just being satisfied with what you got? Every day, Evelyn admitted. But then I think about what happens if we stop growing. Someone else fills that space. And if we're not moving forward, we're falling behind. That sounds exhausting. It is. She looked at him. You thinking about leaving? No. He said it fast, almost defensive. I just wonder sometimes if all this is worth it. Is it worth it to you? He was quiet for a moment. Yeah, it is. For the first time in my life, I'm building something that might last. That matters. Then that's your answer. Christmas came quietly. Evelyn had saved enough to buy small gifts, a new knife for Cole, warm gloves for Pete, a good hat for Sam, a sack of peppermints for Thomas. They ate a chicken she'd been fattening up, and Pete brought a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving. It wasn't elaborate, but it felt like family. To surviving another year, Cole said, raising his glass. To more than surviving, Evelyn countered. To building something that lasts. They drank to that. The new year arrived with another storm, this one worse than anything they'd seen yet. 3 days of whiteout conditions, wind that screamed like something alive, cold so intense that water froze in the house despite the fire burning constantly. They huddled together, rationing firewood, melting snow for water, checking on the animals whenever the wind died down enough to risk it. Sam stayed in the house rather than the barn, sleeping on the floor near the stove. Thomas and Pete showed up on the second day, half frozen, saying their own place had lost its roof. You're staying here, Evelyn said, not asking. They made it work. It was crowded and uncomfortable and smelled like too many people in too small a space, but they made it work. On the third night, when the storm finally started to ease, Cole pulled Evelyn aside. We lost 2 cows, he said quietly. Found them this morning, frozen in the south pasture. The number hit her hard. 2 cows. That was feed money. That was spring revenue. That was everything they'd been trying to protect. The rest? Alive. Cold, but alive. Okay. She took a breath. Okay. We deal with it. Yeah. But she could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. How many more storms? How much more loss they could absorb before it broke them? When the storm cleared, they found the ranch damaged but standing. One chicken coop had partially collapsed under the snow weight. The barn door had blown off its hinges. The garden fence was destroyed, but the house stood. The animals, most of them, survived. They spent January digging out and repairing. Every day brought new problems: a frozen water line, a sick cow, equipment breaking from the cold. It was relentless, but they were still standing. In early February, a wagon showed up at the ranch carrying a woman Evelyn had never seen before. She was maybe 35, dressed practically, with a weathered face and determined eyes. You Evelyn Mercer? The woman asked. I am. Name's Margaret Hayes. I heard you're the one who stood up to Garrett Finch. News travels. It does when it's good news. Margaret climbed down from the wagon. I run a small place about 15 miles west. Been trying to sell eggs and butter in town, but I'm having the same problems you had. Bigger operations pushing me out. What do you want from me? Advice? Or partnership? or just someone who understands what it's like. Margaret looked around the ranch. You built something here. I want to build something too. Evelyn studied her, saw the exhaustion, the determination, the same stubborn refusal to quit that she recognized in herself. Come inside, she said. Let's talk. Over coffee, Margaret laid out her situation. Small operation, good product, no capital to expand. The local merchants wouldn't buy from her because larger suppliers offered better terms. You need collective bargaining, Evelyn said. What's that? You, me, and the other small producers in the area, we work together. Pool our resources, coordinate our pricing, present a united front. We're stronger together than we are separately. Finch tried to crush you for doing exactly that. And he failed, because I had Cole backing me up, and Sam, and Pete. We didn't try to do it alone. Evelyn leaned forward. That's the key. You can't win by yourself, but together we can. Margaret smiled. When do we start? By the end of February, Evelyn had organized meetings with 8 different small farmers and ranchers in the area. They met in the Mercer's house every Sunday afternoon, crowding around the table, sharing information about prices, suppliers, market conditions. It started as information sharing. Then it became coordination. Then it became something bigger. They called it the Hollow Ridge Producers Association. Nothing official, no legal structure, just an agreement to work together and support each other. When one producer had surplus eggs, another would help distribute them. When someone needed supplies, the group would pool money to get better bulk rates. Finch heard about it, of course, but he didn't interfere. Maybe he'd learned his lesson, or maybe he was just waiting for them to fail on their own. They didn't fail. By March, when the snow finally started to retreat, the association had 20 members. The merchants in town had stopped trying to play them against each other because they knew if they treated one producer unfairly, they'd lose access to all of them. You started a revolution, Cole said one night, watching Evelyn organize paperwork from the latest meeting. I started a cooperative. That's different. Is it? Revolution sounds violent. This is just people helping people. You've changed the whole economy of this area, shifted power away from men like Finch and toward people like us. That's revolution, even if it's a quiet one. Evelyn set down her pen. You make it sound bigger than it is. It is big. You just don't see it because you're too close. He pulled her to her feet. You came here with nothing but chickens and determination. Now you're running an organization that's changing how business gets done in this whole region. We're running it, not just me. You started it, and you supported it. Sam helped build it. Pete and Margaret and all the others, they're part of it too. She touched his face. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yeah, you could have. You're stubborn enough. Maybe, but it wouldn't have meant as much. He kissed her then, slow and sure. And for a moment, the ranch and the association and all of it faded away. There was just this. Them. The partnership they'd built that was stronger than either of them alone. When they finally pulled apart, Cole was smiling. You know what I figured out? What? I married you because I needed help running this ranch. Turns out, you didn't need this ranch at all. You could have done anything, gone anywhere. But I came here. Why? She thought about Philadelphia and her sister's house, and the suffocating sense of being trapped in a life that would never be hers, about the advertisement she'd seen and the desperate hope that had made her write that letter. Because I needed a place where I could become who I was supposed to be, she said finally. The ranch didn't make me this person, but it gave me the space to figure out who this person was. And who's that? Someone who doesn't quit, someone who builds things, someone who's stronger than anyone expected, including me. Yeah, Cole said softly. That's exactly who you are. Spring arrived properly in mid-April, sudden and overwhelming. The snow melted into mud, the grass came back green, and the ranch woke up hungry for work. They were ready for it. The garden went in bigger than ever, with 4 other association members contributing labor in exchange for a share of the produce. The chicken operation expanded again, adding another 20 hens and a better system for rotating pasture. The cattle that had survived the winter were healthy and ready to breed, but the biggest change was in how they worked. Cole had stopped trying to do everything himself, started delegating to Sam and Pete, and trusting them to handle things. Evelyn had learned to balance the business side with the physical labor, spending mornings with her hands in the dirt and afternoons organizing supply chains and negotiating deals. They'd found a rhythm that worked. Not perfect, never easy, but sustainable. In May, Margaret showed up with news. The association got approached by a buyer from Helena, she said. Big outfit looking for regular supply of eggs, vegetables, dairy. They want to work with us. How big? Evelyn asked. Big enough to change everything. We'd be talking about steady contracts, guaranteed income, but we'd need to coordinate production across all our members to meet the volume. Can we do that? I think so, but you'd have to lead it. You're the one they want to deal with. Evelyn looked at Cole. He nodded slightly. Your call. Set up the meeting, she said. The meeting happened 2 weeks later. The buyer was a man named Harold Prescott, representing a supply company that distributed across Montana Territory. He was businesslike and direct, laying out exactly what he needed and what he'd pay. The numbers were good. Better than good. There's one condition, Prescott said. I need a single point of contact, someone who can coordinate all the producers, guarantee quality, handle any issues. That person would be you, Mrs. Mercer. That's a lot of responsibility. You've already been doing it. I'm just asking you to make it official. Evelyn thought about what that meant, about the time it would take, the pressure, the risk, about what it would mean for the ranch, for her marriage, for everything they'd built. Then she thought about the other producers in the association, the ones who'd trusted her, worked with her, believed that together they could build something better. I'll do it, she said. But the association makes decisions together. I coordinate, but we all have a voice. Fair enough. Prescott stuck out his hand. We have a deal. They shook on it. Walking out of that meeting, Evelyn felt the weight of what she'd just agreed to. But she also felt something else, a sense of purpose that went beyond just survival. They were building an empire, not the kind made of land and violence, but one made of cooperation and determination. And it was working. That night, sitting on the porch with Cole, watching the sun set over land they'd fought for and earned and made their own, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not the absence of struggle. They'd always have that. But peace in knowing they were exactly where they were supposed to be, doing exactly what they were meant to do. You thinking about Philadelphia? Cole asked. No, haven't thought about it in months. You miss it? Not even a little. She leaned against him. This is home now. Yeah, it is. They sat there in the fading light, two people who'd started as strangers bound by necessity and become something neither of them had expected. Partners. Equals. Two halves of something stronger than either could be alone. The ranch around them was alive with evening sounds, chickens settling in for the night, cattle lowing in the distance, Sam and Pete finishing up the day's last tasks. Everything they'd built, everything they'd fought for, holding steady against whatever came next. And Evelyn knew, with the kind of certainty that comes from having survived the worst and come out standing, that they could handle it. Whatever the frontier threw at them, they'd face it together. Not because it was easy, because it was worth it. Because this life, this place, these people, they were hers. And she'd never let them go. That peace lasted exactly 3 weeks. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in late May, delivered by the same stagecoach driver who'd dropped Evelyn off nearly 2 years earlier. He looked older now, more weathered, but he remembered her. Got mail for the Mercers, he said, handing over a thin envelope with a Philadelphia postmark. Evelyn took it with hands that had gone suddenly cold. She recognized the handwriting. Bad news? The driver asked. Don't know yet. She waited until he'd left before opening it. Cole was out with the cattle. Sam was working the garden. Pete hadn't arrived yet. She stood alone in the kitchen, holding a piece of paper that connected her to a life she'd left behind. The letter was from her sister's husband, Richard. 3 paragraphs written in his cramped, impatient hand. Her sister Catherine was sick, had been sick for months. The doctors didn't know what was wrong, but she was getting worse. They thought Evelyn should know. They weren't asking her to come back, Richard made that clear, but they thought she had a right to know her sister was dying. Evelyn read it twice, then set it on the table and walked outside. The ranch looked the same as it had 10 minutes ago. Chickens scratching in the yard. The garden rose straight and green. Mountains in the distance. Nothing had changed except everything had changed. She found Cole in the north pasture, checking fence posts that had loosened over the winter. He saw her coming and straightened, reading something in her face. What happened? She handed him the letter. He read it slowly, then folded it and gave it back. You going? I don't know. That's your sister. I know who she is. The words came out sharper than she meant. I also know she stood by while her husband made my life miserable. Know she didn't fight for me when I needed her to. Know she was relieved when I left. People do stupid things when they're scared. And now she's dying and I'm supposed to forget all that? Cole didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, patient and steady. I'm not telling you what to do, but I know you, and I know you're going to regret it if you don't go. You don't know that. Yeah, I do, because you're not the kind of person who walks away from family, even when they've hurt you. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to say he was wrong, that she'd already walked away from Philadelphia and everyone in it. But he wasn't wrong. The anger she felt at Catherine was real, but so was the fear of losing her before things could be made right. The association contract, she said. We're supposed to start deliveries next month. I can't just leave. Margaret can handle it, so can I. We'll figure it out. And the ranch, the gardens at peak production, the chickens need Evelyn. He took her shoulders, made her look at him. We'll manage. We've been managing without you before you got here. We can manage for a few weeks while you're gone. I don't want to go back there. I know. I built something here. I don't want to lose it. You won't. This place isn't going anywhere. Neither am I. He pulled her close. Go see your sister. Make your peace, then come home. She pressed her face against his chest, breathing in dust and sweat and the familiar smell of him. What if I can't make peace? What if it's too late? Then at least you tried. That's all anyone can do. The decision made, Evelyn moved fast. She arranged for the stagecoach to pick her up in 3 days, packed a small trunk with clothes she hadn't worn in 2 years, and spent 48 hours teaching Margaret and Cole everything they'd need to know to keep the association running in her absence. You're sure about this? Margaret asked the night before Evelyn was set to leave. They were going over paperwork in the Mercer's kitchen, lists of producers and delivery schedules and quality standards. No, but I'm going anyway. Your sister must mean a lot to you. She did. Once. Evelyn set down her pen. We were close when we were young, before our parents died, before everything got hard. She was the one who taught me to sew, who helped me with my letters. When I was scared, she was the one I went to. What changed? She married Richard, and Richard didn't like having a sister-in-law living with them, eating their food, taking up space. He made it clear I wasn't welcome. And Catherine, Evelyn's voice caught. She chose him. I don't blame her for that, but it still hurt. So why go back? Because Cole's right. If I don't go, I'll regret it, and I've had enough regret in my life. Margaret nodded slowly. The association will be here when you get back. We'll keep it running. I know you will. The last night before leaving, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay beside Cole, listening to him breathe, trying to memorize the feeling of being here. Safe. Home. You awake? He asked quietly. Yeah. Scared? Terrified. He rolled over to face her. Of what? That I'll get there and remember why I left. That I'll see my sister and feel nothing. That I'll realize I don't belong in either place anymore. You belong here. That's not going to change just because you leave for a few weeks. How do you know? Because I know you. You don't give up on things you've built. And you built this. He touched her face. This place, this life, us. You built all of it. A few weeks in Philadelphia won't erase that. What if something happens while I'm gone? What if the contract falls through, or Finch causes problems, or then we'll handle it. Stop trying to control everything. I'm not. You are. You always do. But he said it gently. You think if you plan for every possibility, nothing bad can happen. But that's not how life works. I know that. Do you? She was quiet for a moment. No, I guess I don't. Things are going to go wrong while you're gone. They always do. But we'll figure it out. And when you come back, we'll still be here. Still standing, still yours. Promise? I promise. She kissed him then, trying to pour everything she felt into it. Gratitude and fear and love and trust. When they finally pulled apart, she felt steadier. Still scared, but steadier. I'm coming back, she said. No matter what happens there, I'm coming back here. I know. This is home. Yeah, it is. The stagecoach came at dawn. Cole, Sam, Pete, and Margaret all stood in the yard to see her off. It felt surreal, like she was watching herself from a distance. Don't let the chickens slack off, she told Sam. I won't. And make sure the association deliveries go out on time. First impression matters. We know, Margaret said. And if Finch... Evelyn. Cole stepped forward. Go. We've got this. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and climbed into the stagecoach. Through the window, she watched the ranch shrink into the distance, watched Cole standing in the yard until he was just a speck, then nothing. Then she turned to face forward toward Philadelphia, toward the past she'd left behind. The journey took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of dust and bad food and sleeping in coaches and cheap hotels. 3 weeks of watching the landscape change from wide-open frontier to settled farmland to crowded cities. By the time the stagecoach rolled into Philadelphia, Evelyn felt like she'd traveled to a different world. The city hit her like a wall, noise and people and buildings crowding against each other, the smell of smoke and horses and too many bodies pressed together. She'd forgotten how loud it was, how claustrophobic. She made her way to her sister's house on foot, carrying her trunk, ignoring the stares of people who clearly thought she looked out of place. She probably did. Her dress was practical and worn, her hands calloused, her face sunburned. She didn't look like a Philadelphia lady anymore. She didn't feel like one either. Richard answered the door. He looked the same, thin, pinched, perpetually irritated. His eyes widened when he saw her. Evelyn? Richard, I got your letter. I didn't think you'd actually come. Can I see her? He stepped aside without another word. The house was exactly as she remembered. Dark wallpaper, heavy furniture, everything expensive and uncomfortable. It had never felt like home, even when she'd lived here. She's upstairs, Richard said. Second door on the left. The doctor's with her now, but you can go up. Evelyn climbed the stairs slowly, her heart pounding. At the top, she paused outside the door, hearing low voices inside. Then she knocked. Come in, someone called. She pushed the door open. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. A doctor stood beside the bed packing instruments into a leather bag. And in the bed, so small and pale she barely looked real, was Catherine. Evelyn's breath caught. Her sister had always been beautiful. Delicate features, soft hair, the kind of prettiness that made people want to protect her. Now she looked like a ghost. Her skin was gray, her cheeks sunken, her eyes too large for her face. Evelyn? Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. I'm here. The doctor excused himself, leaving them alone. Evelyn crossed the room and sat carefully on the edge of the bed. You came, Catherine said. Of course I came. Richard said you wouldn't, said you hated us too much. I don't hate you. You should. Catherine's hand found hers, fingers cold and thin. I was a coward. I let him treat you badly. I chose him over you. You had every right to leave. Cat, let me finish, please. Catherine took a shaky breath. I knew he wanted you gone. I knew he was making your life miserable. And I didn't stop him because I was afraid if I stood up for you, he'd leave me. I was so scared of being alone that I sacrificed you instead. Evelyn felt tears burning her eyes. You weren't alone. You had me. I know. And I threw that away. Catherine squeezed her hand. I'm sorry. I've been sorry every day since you left. I wanted to write, to tell you, but I was too ashamed. You wrote me once, after I got married, a short note saying congratulations. I wanted to write more, to ask if you were happy, if you were safe, but I didn't feel like I had the right. You're my sister. You always have the right. Catherine started crying then, silent tears sliding down her wasted face. Evelyn pulled her close, careful of how fragile she felt, and held her while she wept. I'm dying, Catherine said finally. The doctors don't know what it is, but it's taking me. I don't have much time left. Don't say that. It's true. And I'm scared, Evie. I'm so scared. Evelyn held her tighter. I'm here now. You're not alone. Will you stay? Until the end. The request hit Evelyn hard. She thought about the ranch, about Cole and the association and everything waiting for her back in Montana, about the life she'd built that was wholly hers. Then she looked at her sister. dying and afraid, asking for the one thing Evelyn had always been able to give her: presence, comfort, love. "I'll stay," she said. The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm. Evelyn stayed at the house, sleeping in her old room, spending her days at Catherine's bedside. They talked about everything and nothing, about their childhood, about their parents, about the years they'd spent apart. Catherine wanted to know about Montana, about the ranch and coal and the life Evelyn had built. "Tell me about him," she said one afternoon. "Your husband. He's difficult, stubborn, doesn't talk much." "You love him?" It wasn't a question. Evelyn smiled. "Yeah, I do. Didn't expect to, but I do." "What's he like?" "Hard. The frontier makes people hard, but fair and loyal. When he gives you his word, he keeps it." "Is he good to you?" "He's my partner. We work together, support each other. It's not like your marriage or anything I saw growing up. It's something different, something better." "I'm glad." Catherine's voice was fading. She tired so easily now. "I'm glad you found something better than what we had here. Cat, it's true. This place, this life, it would have killed you. You were always too big for it, too strong. You needed space to become who you were meant to be." "And who's that?" "Someone remarkable." Catherine smiled. "Someone who doesn't need anyone's permission to exist." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "I learned that from you. You were the one who taught me to sew, to read, to think for myself." "Then at least I did something right." The third week, Catherine took a turn for the worse. The doctor came twice a day, but there was nothing he could do except make her comfortable. Evelyn sat with her through the nights, holding her hand, talking quietly when Catherine was awake, sitting in silence when she wasn't. Richard stayed away mostly. Evelyn didn't blame him. He'd never been good with suffering. On a Tuesday night, with rain beating against the windows, Catherine woke from a fitful sleep and looked at Evelyn with sudden clarity. "You need to go back," she said. "Not yet." "Soon. You don't belong here anymore." "I'm not leaving you." "You will. When I'm gone. And that's okay." Catherine's grip on her hand tightened. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't waste your life being angry at me. Don't let what I did to you poison what you've built. You're happy there. I can see it. Don't give that up." "I won't." "And tell your husband. Tell him thank you for giving you what I couldn't. A real home, a real partnership." "I will." Catherine smiled, her eyes already closing again. "You were always the strong one, Evie. Always." She slipped back into sleep. Evelyn sat with her through the night, watching her breathe, memorizing her face. 2 days later, Catherine died. It happened quietly, in the early morning, with Evelyn holding her hand. One moment she was breathing, shallow and labored. The next, she wasn't. Evelyn sat there for a long time, still holding that cold hand, feeling the weight of loss settling into her bones. Then she stood up, pulled the sheet over her sister's face, and went to tell Richard. The funeral was small, a handful of Richard's business associates, a few neighbors who'd known Catherine. Evelyn stood apart from them, feeling like a stranger at her own sister's burial. Afterward, Richard approached her. "What will you do now?" he asked. "Go home." "To Montana?" "Yes." "You could stay. The house is paid for. I'm sure we could find you work, or—" "No," she said it firmly. "My life is there now. With my husband. With my ranch." Richard nodded slowly. "She was happy you came, at the end. It mattered to her. It mattered to me, too. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for—" He stopped, looking uncomfortable. "I'm sorry. I know." She didn't forgive him, wasn't sure she ever would, but she accepted the apology. "Take care of yourself, Richard." "You too." She left that afternoon carrying the same trunk she'd arrived with, feeling lighter, somehow, despite the grief. She'd made her peace, done what she came to do. Now, she could go home. The journey back took another 3 weeks. This time, every mile felt like moving toward something instead of away from it. The cities thinned out, the farmland gave way to open prairie, and finally, the mountains came into view. Montana. Home. The stagecoach dropped her in Hollow Ridge on a bright afternoon in late June. The town looked the same. The same dusty street, the same buildings, the same mountains in the distance. But Evelyn had changed. She could feel it. The anger she'd carried for so long, at her sister, at Richard, at the life that had tried to make her small, had burned away. What was left was cleaner, stronger. She hired a wagon to take her and her trunk out to the ranch, watching familiar landmarks pass. The old fence post Cole had marked, the creek where they'd lost a calf last spring, the line of trees that meant they were almost home. And then, there it was. The ranch. Their ranch. It looked different. Better. There were new coops she didn't recognize. The garden had been expanded again. And the fence line looked freshly repaired. They'd been working, building, moving forward without her. The wagon stopped in front of the house. Evelyn climbed down, her heart pounding. The door opened, and Cole stepped out. He stopped when he saw her, his face doing something complicated. Relief and joy and something that looked like disbelief. "You came back," he said. "I told you I would." He crossed the yard in 4 long strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I wasn't sure," he said into her hair. "I hoped, but I wasn't sure. This is home. Of course I came back." He pulled back just enough to look at her face. "Your sister?" "She died 2 weeks ago." "I'm sorry." "Me too, but we made our peace. That's what matters." He nodded, understanding. Then he kissed her, and it felt like coming home in a way the landscape hadn't quite managed. When they finally pulled apart, Sam and Pete were standing on the porch, grinning. "About time you got back," Sam called. "These chickens have been asking for you." "The chickens don't talk, Sam." "You sure about that?" Evelyn laughed, feeling something tight in her chest finally release. She was home. Really home. That night, after she'd unpacked and toured the improvements they'd made and heard all the news she'd missed, she sat with Cole on the porch watching the sun set. "The association contract went through," he said. "First delivery was last week. Margaret handled it perfectly." "I knew she would." "Finch came by while you were gone. Wanted to talk business." "What kind of business?" "He's thinking about joining the association. Says if he can't beat us, might as well join us." Evelyn raised her eyebrows. "You're joking." "I'm not." "Told him I'd have to ask you about it. It's your organization." "It's our organization. What do you think?" Cole considered. "I think if we're building something that lasts, we can't keep everyone out just because we don't like them. Might be smarter to bring him in, let him see how we operate, might change him. Or he might try to take over." "Might, but I trust you to handle him if he tries." She leaned against his shoulder. "I miss this, the ranch, the work, the problems, all of it." "Even the chickens?" "Especially the chickens." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the light fade from the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Closer in, the chickens were settling in for the night, making their soft clucking sounds. "I learned something in Philadelphia," Evelyn said finally. "What's that?" "That you can't go back." "Not really. The place might be the same, the people might be the same, but you're different. What used to fit doesn't anymore." "Regret leaving?" "No. I regret that it took my sister dying for me to realize I'd already let go, that I'd already moved on." She turned to look at him. "But I don't regret coming here. Don't regret building this life with you. This is real. This is mine. Philadelphia never was." "Ours," Cole corrected. "What? You said this is yours." "But it's ours. We built it together." She smiled. "Yeah, we did." The stars came out one by one, filling the sky with light. The air cooled, carrying the smell of sage and grass and the particular scent of home. Evelyn sat there, surrounded by everything she'd built, and felt something settle deep in her bones. This was where she belonged. Not because someone had told her to be here, or because she had no other choice, but because she'd chosen it. Every single day, she chose it, and that made all the difference. The decision about Finch came 3 days after Evelyn returned. She called an emergency association meeting, and 23 producers crammed into the Mercer's house on a Sunday afternoon that was too hot for comfort. They brought questions, opinions, and in Margaret's case, a pie she'd stress-baked at 4 in the morning. "He wants in?" a rancher named Thomas Caldwell asked, his skepticism so thick you could spread it on bread. The same man who tried to run half of us out of business? That's what he says, Evelyn confirmed. And we're supposed to just forget what he did? I'm not suggesting we forget. I'm suggesting we consider what's practical. She looked around the room. Right now, Finch controls half the market we don't. If he joins us, we consolidate power. If he doesn't, he stays out there as competition, and eventually he'll find another way to undercut us. Or we could just run him out, someone muttered. With what? Margaret asked. We're doing well, but we're not big enough to push out someone with his resources. Not yet, anyway. The debate went on for 2 hours. Some wanted him in. Some wanted him blacklisted. Some just wanted to go home and avoid the whole mess. Finally, Evelyn called for a vote. The result was closer than she'd expected, 12 in favor, 11 against. Majority wins, she said. He's in, but with conditions. She drafted the terms herself that night. Finch would join as an equal member, not a leader. He'd pay the same fees, follow the same rules, and get no special treatment. Any attempt to manipulate prices or undermine other members would result in immediate expulsion. Cole read it over and added a clause about binding arbitration for disputes. You think he'll sign it? He asked. If he wants in, he will. If he doesn't, we'll know this was just another power play. Finch signed it. Without argument, without trying to negotiate better terms. Just signed it and showed up to the next meeting like he'd been there all along. It was unsettling. I don't trust him, Sam said, watching Finch talk with some of the other ranchers after the meeting ended. Neither do I, Evelyn said, but I trust the contract, and I trust us to hold him to it. And if he tries something, then we deal with it, same as we always have. But Finch didn't try anything. He showed up to meetings, contributed fairly to the collective buying pools, and even helped coordinate a bulk feed purchase that saved everyone money. He wasn't friendly exactly, but he wasn't hostile either, just present, participating. He's planning something, Cole said one night. Men like him don't just change. Maybe not, but maybe he figured out it's easier to work with us than against us. Evelyn set down the ledger she'd been reviewing. Or maybe he's just tired. Running that big operation alone, it's got to be exhausting. You're being too generous. Probably, but I'd rather give him a chance and be wrong than shut him out and confirm he was right about us all along. Cole shook his head, but he was smiling. You're a better person than I am. No, I'm just more stubborn. There's a difference. Summer deepened into the kind of heat that made everything feel slow and heavy. The garden produced more than they could sell, so Evelyn started preserving, canning vegetables, drying herbs, putting up stores for winter. Sam helped, and so did Thomas when Pete brought him by. The boy was 13 now, taller and less shy, with his grandfather's steady hands. You ever think about what you want to do when you're grown? Evelyn asked him one afternoon. They were sorting beans, sitting in the shade of the porch. Work a ranch, I guess, like Grandpa Pete. You like ranch work? Thomas shrugged. It's what I know. That's not what I asked. He was quiet for a moment, his hands still moving through the beans. I like building things, fixing things, making stuff work better than it did before. Like what? Built a new gate for our chicken coop last month. Designed it so it closes itself when you walk through. Grandpa said it was clever. Sounds like it. You show anyone else? No, it's just a gate. It's not just anything if you made it better. Evelyn set down her bowl. You know what the world needs, Thomas? People who see problems and fix them. People who build solutions instead of waiting for someone else to do it. That's a skill. Don't waste it just doing what you know. He looked at her with something like hope. You think I could do something besides ranch work? I think you could do anything you set your mind to. Question is what you want. I want to build things that matter. Then do that. It was a small conversation, the kind that happens 1,000 times on any given day and usually gets forgotten. But Evelyn saw something shift in the boy's face. Saw him sit up a little straighter, work a little faster, like someone had given him permission to want more than what he'd been told to expect. That was the thing about the frontier that people back east never understood. It wasn't about being tough or hard or surviving against the odds. It was about having room to become who you actually were instead of who someone else needed you to be. That's what had saved Evelyn. Not the ranch, not the work, but the space to figure out she was someone who built things. Someone who didn't quit. And maybe that's what she was building now. Not just a ranch or a business, but a place where people could figure that out for themselves. By August, the association was running smoother than Evelyn had dared hope. The Helena contract was being fulfilled on schedule, new buyers were approaching them regularly, and the collective bargaining power meant everyone was getting better prices for supplies. Even Finch seemed genuinely invested, showing up early to meetings and offering advice that was actually useful. "I don't like this," Margaret said after one particularly productive meeting. "When things go this well, it means something bad is coming. Or it means we're doing a good job." I've lived on the frontier too long to believe that. Margaret was right to be suspicious. The trouble arrived in mid-September in the form of a railroad company. The Northern Mountain Railway sent a representative named James Hutchinson, a smooth-talking man in an expensive suit who showed up in Hollow Ridge asking questions about land and water rights, and who owned what. Evelyn heard about it from Frank Bishop, who mentioned it casually while picking up his weekly egg delivery. "Railroad?" Evelyn repeated, "coming through here?" That's what the man said, surveying routes, seeing what's available. Did he say when? Didn't give specifics. Just said the company's looking to expand west and Hollow Ridge is on their list of potential stops. Evelyn went straight home and told Cole. "Railroad could be good for us," he said. "Easier shipping, access to bigger markets. Or it could destroy everything we've built. Railroads don't ask permission. They take what they want and pay pennies for it. We don't know that's what's happening. We don't know it's not." She called another association meeting. This time, Hutchinson showed up uninvited, walking in like he'd been expected. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, smiling broadly, "I understand there's some concern about the railroad's plans. I'm here to address those concerns directly." "Good," Evelyn said. "Start with what you want from us." Hutchinson didn't seem bothered by her directness. He laid out maps on the table, showing proposed routes through the area. 3 of them cut directly through association members' land, including the Mercer Ranch. "We're prepared to offer fair compensation for any land we need," Hutchinson said. "Define fair," Evelyn said. He named a figure. It was insultingly low. "That's not fair," Margaret said. "That's theft with paperwork. That's the standard rate the railroad pays for undeveloped land. This isn't undeveloped. We've got working ranches, productive farms, homes. You're not buying empty prairie." Hutchinson's smile tightened. "The railroad is coming through one way or another. We can do this cooperatively, or we can involve the territorial government in eminent domain proceedings. Your choice." The room erupted, voices overlapping, people standing, accusations flying. Evelyn let it run for 30 seconds, then whistled sharp and loud. "Enough!" She looked at Hutchinson. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your maps and your insultingly low offer and go back to your company. You're going to tell them that the Hollow Ridge Producers Association is willing to negotiate, but we negotiate as a group. We don't take individual deals, we don't get played against each other, and we don't accept pennies for land we've bled to improve. The railroad doesn't negotiate with farm collectives. Then the railroad is going to have a very difficult time getting cooperation from 23 landowners who know how to fight back." Hutchinson looked around the room, reading the faces. Whatever he saw there made him reconsider his approach. "I'll relay your position to my superiors," he said carefully. "You do that." After he left, the room stayed tense. "They'll use eminent domain," Caldwell said. "Railroads got government backing. They can take what they want." "Maybe," Evelyn said, "but it'll be expensive and time-consuming if we fight it, and fighting together, we can make it expensive enough that they'd rather negotiate. Or they'll just crush us. They might try, but I'd rather go down fighting than just hand over everything we've built." Finch, who'd been quiet through the whole exchange, finally spoke. "She's right. I've dealt with railroad companies before. They prefer cooperation because force is messy. They'll negotiate if they think it's cheaper than fighting. And if they don't," someone asked, "then we make fighting us so expensive they have no choice." The association voted to stand together. No individual deals, no selling out, no matter what the railroad offered. They'd negotiate collectively or not at all. Evelyn went home that night feeling the weight of what they'd just committed to. "You think we can win this?" Cole asked. "I think we can make them pay for whatever they take. That's the best we can hope for." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I've got." The railroad came back 2 weeks later with a better offer. Still not good enough, but better. The association countered. The railroad countered back. It went on like that for 6 weeks, offers and counteroffers, threats and compromises. each side testing the other's resolve. Evelyn coordinated everything, working with a lawyer Margaret knew and Helena to make sure they weren't getting cheated on the legal language. She barely slept, running on coffee and stubbornness, negotiating during the day, and keeping the ranch running at night. "You're going to collapse," Cole said, watching her go over contracts at midnight. "I'm fine." "You're not. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" "I don't know. Does it matter?" "Yeah, it does. You can't keep this up." "I don't have a choice. If I stop, this whole thing falls apart." "That's not true. Margaret can handle negotiations. Sam and I can run the ranch. You're not the only one who can do this. But I'm the one people trust. If I step back, they'll think I don't believe we can win." Cole pulled the papers away from her. "Listen to me. You've been carrying this whole community on your back for 2 years. You organized the association, you built the distribution network, you stood up to Finch and the railroad and everyone else who tried to push us around. You've proven yourself 100 times over. Nobody's going to think less of you for taking care of yourself. I can't stop now. Not when we're this close. You're not stopping, you're resting. There's a difference." He pulled her to her feet. "Come on, bed. The contracts will still be there tomorrow." She was too tired to argue. Let him lead her to their room, help her out of her boots, pull the blanket over her. She was asleep before her head hit the pillow. When she woke 12 hours later, the sun was high and the house was quiet. She found Cole in the kitchen, reading through the contracts she'd been working on. "You let me sleep," she said. "You needed it." "The meeting with the railroad. Margaret handled it. They accepted our latest counter. We're signing next week." Evelyn sat down hard. "They accepted?" "Yeah. Took a little more negotiating, but Margaret held firm. We got triple what they originally offered, plus guaranteed employment for association members in the construction phase, plus a commitment to use our supply network for feeding the work crews. That's everything we wanted." "Not quite everything. They're still taking the land, but we're getting paid fairly for it, and we're turning it into additional business. It's a win." Evelyn felt something that had been wound tight in her chest for weeks finally loosen. "We did it. You did it. This was your plan, your strategy. Margaret just executed it. We did it together, all of us." She looked at him. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You know that, right?" "I know you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." The contract signing happened the following Tuesday. The whole association showed up, along with Hutchinson and a territorial judge who notarized everything. When it was done, they had a guaranteed income stream that would sustain all of them for years. That night, they celebrated. Not fancy, just a gathering at the Mercer Ranch with food everyone brought and music someone scraped out on a fiddle. Kids ran around catching fireflies while the adults talked and laughed and let themselves feel proud of what they'd accomplished. Evelyn stood apart from it all for a moment, watching. Sam was teaching Thomas how to dance, both of them laughing when they stepped on each other's feet. Pete was arguing good-naturedly with Caldwell about something. Margaret was holding court with a group of women, probably planning the next expansion. Cole was talking with Finch, and whatever they were discussing, it looked civil. This was what she'd built. Not just a business, not just a collective, but a community. People who'd learned to trust each other, work together, stand up for themselves. "You look pleased with yourself," Finch said, appearing beside her. "I am." "You should be. What you've done here, it's impressive." "What we've done. You're part of this now." "Am I?" He looked at her. "I wasn't sure you'd ever see it that way. You signed the contract. You followed the rules. You've contributed. That makes you part of it. I tried to destroy you, you know, when you first started. I saw you as a threat." "I know. And you let me join anyway. Because I learned something in the last few years. Holding grudges is expensive. Takes energy I'd rather spend building things." She turned to face him. "You're not the same man who showed up trying to intimidate me. At least, I don't think you are." "I'm not. This place, what you've built, it showed me there's a better way. More profitable, too, as it turns out. That's the secret. Cooperation beats competition almost every time. It's just harder to see when you're used to fighting alone." Finch nodded slowly. "I appreciate you giving me the chance to figure that out. Don't make me regret it." "I won't." As fall settled in, the ranch reached a kind of equilibrium Evelyn had never experienced before. The work was still hard, still constant, but it was manageable. The association was running well. The railroad contract was providing steady income. The cattle were healthy, the chickens were producing, the garden had yielded enough to fill the root cellar and then some. For the first time since arriving in Montana, Evelyn could breathe without feeling like she was one disaster away from losing everything. "What do you want to do next?" Cole asked one evening. They were on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. "Next?" "You always have a next thing, a plan, something you're working toward." Evelyn thought about it. "I want to expand the garden operation. Maybe get a greenhouse so we can grow year-round. That'd give us an edge in winter when produce is scarce." "That's a ranch thing. What about you? What do you want that's just for you?" The question caught her off guard. She'd spent so long thinking about the ranch, the association, everyone else's needs, that she'd stopped thinking about her own wants as separate from all that. "I don't know," she said finally. "I think this is what I want, building things, helping people build their own things, watching it all grow into something bigger than any of us could have managed alone." "That's what you want? Not just what you think you should want?" "Yeah, I think so." She looked at him. "What about you? What do you want?" "I want what we've got. A working ranch, a partner I can trust, a life that makes sense." He paused. "And maybe, someday, a family to pass it all on to." The statement hung in the air between them. They'd never talked about children, never planned that far ahead. "You want kids?" Evelyn asked. "Eventually, if you do, if it happens." He took her hand. "But I'm not in a rush. We've got time." "Yeah, we do." They sat in comfortable silence, both thinking about futures that suddenly seemed possible instead of terrifying. Winter came again, but this time they were ready. The livestock were healthy and well-fed. The supplies were stocked. The association members helped each other through the hard months, sharing resources and labor and the kind of support that only comes from having survived together. And when spring arrived, Evelyn found out she was pregnant. She told Cole on a morning in late April, when the snow was finally melting and the garden was ready to be planted again. They were in the barn, checking on a cow who was due to calve any day. "I'm pregnant," she said, not able to think of a better way to lead into it. Cole froze, his hand on the cow's flank. "You're sure?" "Pretty sure. All the signs are there." He straightened slowly, turned to face her. "How do you feel about it?" "Terrified, excited, both at the same time." "Yeah, me too." He crossed the space between them and pulled her close. "We're going to be parents. We're going to be terrible at it. Probably. But we'll figure it out. Same as we figured out everything else." The baby came in late November, right after the first real snowfall. A girl, small and angry and perfect. They named her Catherine after Evelyn's sister and Sarah after Cole's mother. The birth was hard. Hours of labor that left Evelyn exhausted and convinced she was going to die. But Margaret was there, having helped deliver half the babies in the area, and she talked Evelyn through it with the same no-nonsense competence she brought to everything. When it was over, when they placed the baby in her arms, Evelyn looked down at this tiny person and felt something shift in her chest. This was hers, theirs, another thing they'd built together. "She's so small," Cole said, touching the baby's hand with one finger. "All babies are small." "Yeah, but this one's ours. That makes it different." Evelyn couldn't argue with that logic. The first year with Catherine was the hardest thing Evelyn had ever done, and she'd done a lot of hard things. The baby didn't sleep, didn't eat well, cried constantly. Evelyn was exhausted to her bones, running on no sleep and stubbornness, trying to manage the ranch and the association and motherhood all at once. "You need help," Margaret said, showing up one day with a basket of food and a determined expression. "I'm managing." "You're drowning. Let me help." Margaret started coming by 3 times a week, taking Catherine so Evelyn could sleep or work or just exist without a baby attached to her. Sam stepped up too, handling more of the garden work. Pete brought Thomas by more often, and the boy proved surprisingly good with the baby, making her laugh in ways nobody else could. Slowly and possibly, they found a new rhythm. The ranch kept running, the association kept growing, Catherine kept growing too, turning from a screaming bundle of need into a person with opinions and preferences and a smile that made everything worth it. By the time Catherine was 2, Evelyn had learned to balance it all. Not perfectly. There was no such thing as perfect, but well enough. She'd built systems, delegated responsibilities, learned to ask for help instead of trying to do everything herself. The association had expanded to 40 members now, covering 3 different towns. They'd established a cooperative store in Hollow Ridge that sold their products directly to consumers. The railroad had brought new business and new challenges, but they'd adapted, thrived even. And Evelyn had learned something important. She wasn't just building a ranch or a business anymore. She was building a legacy, something that would last beyond her, beyond any one person, something that would give other people the same chance she'd had, to become who they were meant to be instead of who they'd been told to be. One evening in early spring, when Catherine was 3 and getting into everything, Evelyn stood on the porch watching her daughter chase chickens through the yard. Cole came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "You thinking about something?" he asked. "Yeah, about how different everything is from when I got here." "Good different." "The best different." She leaned back against him. "I came here thinking I was just surviving, getting away from a bad situation, making the best of limited options. And now? Now I know I wasn't running from anything. I was running toward this, toward becoming someone who builds instead of endures, someone who fights for what matters." "You were always that person. You just needed the space to figure it out." "Maybe. But this place gave me that space. You gave me that space." Catherine shrieked with laughter as a hen pecked at her shoe. Evelyn smiled, watching her daughter, fearless and curious and completely herself. "You think she'll stay?" Cole asked. "When she's grown? Or will she leave like you did?" "I don't know. I hope whatever she does, it's because she chose it, not because she felt trapped or desperate or like she had no other option. We'll make sure of that." "Yeah, we will." The years continued to pass, marked by seasons and harvests, and the endless work of building something that lasted. Catherine grew, and eventually there was a brother, then another sister. The ranch expanded. The association became an institution. Evelyn's hair started showing gray, and Cole's back got stiffer, and they both moved a little slower than they used to. But the work continued. The building continued. Sam eventually bought his own place, a small ranch he built from scratch, using everything Evelyn and Cole had taught him. Thomas became an engineer, designing irrigation systems that revolutionized farming in the area. Margaret took over running the association when Evelyn finally stepped back, and she ran it just as well, maybe better. Finch never did try to take over. He became one of their most reliable members, and when he died at 73, his will left money to the Association for Scholarships for Young Farmers. And Evelyn kept building. Not just the ranch anymore, though she still worked it alongside Cole and their children, but other things too. She helped establish a school in Hollow Ridge, fought for women to have the right to own property in their own names, wrote letters to the territorial government about improving infrastructure, mentored young women who came to her asking how she'd done it, how she'd built a life on her own terms. She told them all the same thing. Start with what you have. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Build something small and make it work. Then build something bigger. Find people you can trust and work with them. Don't quit, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And above all, don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of. You decide that. Nobody else. The frontier changed as the decades passed. Hollow Ridge grew from a dusty outpost to a real town with paved streets and electricity. The railroad brought more people, more business, more opportunities. Montana became a state. The association evolved into a formal cooperative that served hundreds of farmers and ranchers across the region. But the core of what Evelyn had built remained the same. People helping people, communities supporting each other. The understanding that you could build something better together than you ever could alone. On a warm afternoon in late summer, when Evelyn was 68 and sitting on the porch watching her grandchildren play in the yard, a young woman rode up to the ranch. She was maybe 25, dusty from travel, with determined eyes and a worn suitcase tied to her saddle. "Are you Evelyn Mercer?" the woman asked. "I am." "My name's Ann Patterson. I came from Ohio. I heard about what you built here, about the association and everything you did. I want to learn how to do it myself, back home, in my community." Evelyn looked at this young woman and saw herself 40 years earlier, desperate and determined and hoping for a chance. "Come sit down," she said. "Tell me about your situation." Ann talked for an hour, laying out her plans and her fears and her hopes. Evelyn listened, asked questions, offered advice. When Anne finally left, she had a head full of strategies and a promise that Evelyn would help however she could. Cole came out onto the porch after Anne had ridden away. "Another one wanting to change the world?" he asked, settling into his chair with a grunt. His joints bothered him more these days. "Something like that." "You going to help her?" "Of course. That's what this was all for, wasn't it? Building something other people could learn from, something that could spread." "You've done more than that. You changed this whole region, changed how people think about cooperation and community and what's possible. We changed it, you, me, Margaret, Sam, all of us. You started it, only because I had to, because I was desperate and angry and refusing to accept what I'd been told was possible." She looked at him. "You know what I figured out?" "What?" "That desperation isn't weakness, it's fuel. When you've got nothing left to lose, you're free to try things other people are too scared to risk. And sometimes those things work. Sometimes they change everything." Is that what you'd tell your younger self? If you could go back to that day you stepped off the stagecoach? Evelyn thought about it, about the frightened woman carrying a crate of chickens, facing a life she couldn't imagine, convinced she was just making the best of a bad situation. I'd tell her she's stronger than she knows, that the things that feel like endings are actually beginnings, that every time someone underestimates her, it's an opportunity to prove them wrong. She smiled. And I'd tell her to trust the chickens. They're a better investment than she thinks. Cole laughed. The chickens. Of course. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over land they'd spent a lifetime working. The ranch was quieter now than it used to be. The association handled by younger hands, the work distributed among their children and grandchildren, and the community they'd built. But it was still theirs, still home. "You have any regrets?" Cole asked. "Some. A few. Mostly about things I didn't say or didn't do soon enough. But nothing big, nothing that matters." "Not even about leaving Philadelphia? About everything you left behind?" "Especially not that. Everything I left behind was killing me slowly. Coming here, building this, it saved my life, gave me a life worth saving." "Yeah." He reached over and took her hand. "Me too." They sat there as the light faded, two people who'd started as strangers and become everything to each other. The ranch around them was full of their work, their choices, their determination to build something that lasted. And it had lasted. Through droughts and storms and economic crashes, and all the things the frontier threw at people who dared to build instead of just survive. It had lasted because they'd built it together, built it strong, built it on foundations of trust and cooperation and the stubborn refusal to quit. The chickens in the yard were descendants of the ones Evelyn had brought with her 40 years ago. The garden was planted in soil she'd broken herself. The house had been expanded and improved, but the original structure still stood at its core. Everything they'd built was still here, still working, still growing. That was the thing about building something real. It didn't require perfection. It required persistence. The willingness to start small and keep going. To fail and adapt. To accept help and offer it in return. To believe that what you built today could become something bigger tomorrow. And maybe that's what Evelyn wanted people to understand about her story. About any story of building a life on the frontier or anywhere else. It wasn't about being exceptional or special or somehow different from everyone else. It was about making a choice and then making that choice again every single day. The choice to keep going, to keep building, to keep believing that the work mattered and the effort was worth it. She'd been given a chance, just one chance, in the form of a marriage contract and a 5-mile walk in impractical boots. She could have given up 100 times. Could have gone back to Philadelphia. Could have accepted defeat. Could have settled for less than what she wanted, but she hadn't. She'd taken that chance and built it into a life. Then she'd helped other people build their own lives. And those people had helped others. And it had spread this idea that you could build something better if you were willing to work for it and work together. That was the legacy. Not the ranch or the association or any of the specific things she'd accomplished, but the idea behind all of it. That ordinary people could do extraordinary things if they refused to accept ordinary limitations. The sun finished setting, leaving them in that soft twilight that made everything look gentler than it was. From inside the house came the sounds of dinner being prepared, grandchildren arguing, life continuing. "You ready to go in?" Cole asked. "In a minute. I want to sit here a little longer." "All right." So they sat, Two old people on a porch they'd built with their own hands, surrounded by a life they'd created from nothing but determination and a crate of chickens. And if you'd asked Evelyn in that moment whether it had all been worth it, the struggle, the pain, the endless work, the sacrifices and compromises and battles fought, she would have said yes without hesitation. Because she'd learned something important in those 40 years, something she wished more people understood. You don't build a life by waiting for the perfect moment, or the perfect circumstances, or the perfect partner. You build it by starting where you are with what you have and refusing to quit. By finding people who share your values and working alongside them. By failing and learning and trying again. You build it by choosing, every single day, to be the person you want to be instead of the person everyone expects. And sometimes, if you're lucky and stubborn and willing to do the work, you build something that lasts. Something that matters. Something that changes not just your own life, but the lives of everyone around you. That's what Evelyn had built. Not a ranch, though the ranch was part of it. Not a business, though the association was part of it too. But a life. A real, complicated, imperfect, beautiful life that was entirely hers. And in the end, that was everything.